Hello and welcome to episode 36 of the XrmToolCast. In this episode, we talk to Marc Schweigert, a Principal Program Manager Lead, the Customer Advisory Team at Power Platform, also known as Power Cat. Kind of a fun name. You may recognize Marc from episode 6. This episode, he's back to talk to us about the Power Platform ALM Starter Kit. This is not to be confused with the Center of Excellence Starter Kit. This is actually a Canvas app designed to help with all the ALM issues that you have on the Power Platform. It's a very exciting tool that may or may not be available by the time this episode goes live. So if it's not, keep track of it because it's one you're going to want to know about. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the XrmToolCast. With me, your host, Daryl, always raising the bar, and my co-host, Jonas, always in the dark rap. Jonas, how's it going?
It's good, thanks. Yeah, it's truly dark. Sweden in
Yeah,
the fall is very dark, but it has its upsides as well. Because
yeah.
I was just taking a walk and it was really dark and the sky was clear, so I just stopped, picked up my phone, tried to take pictures of the stars and of Mars is incredible tonight. So, but well, of course you cannot take those pictures very well. But anyway, we get stars.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Yeah,
good. Yeah, and it's always dark for you because we record in the afternoon, and well,
yeah,
I'm sorry, my afternoon, which would be your
yes,
evening. So that's why it's
yes, it is. It
always
is.
dark, especially in these wee winter months here. So, enough about that. Let's talk about our guest. We have a repeat attendee, repeat guest here, and he is Marc Schweigert. Schweigert.
Schweigert. Yep.
Close enough. Schweigert. Okay, all right, good. I didn't totally butcher it. Samsonite. I was way off. Anyway, Marc was on episode, I believe, 6, somewhere near the beginning. And we had a big, lengthy conversation about naming things. And this one, Marc has transitioned to a different role. And we have a new tweet that Jonas and I saw that looked kind of exciting. And so we were hoping to get some more details and see what we can get from Marc. So, Marc, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit? Make sure that they know you're a Microsoft employee. And we're getting a little bit of detailed information here. So,
Yeah,
go ahead.
absolutely. I'm Marc Schweigert. I'm a program manager on the Power Customer Advisory Team. We're a team that sits in the product group and engineering in the customer success group. And we do a number of things, but our primary motion is to work with customers to successfully adopt Power Platform, most specifically Power Apps, Power Automate, um, virtual agents, basically all things other than Power BI. We have a sister team, the Power BI Customer Advisory Team. So while we focus on Power BI in the context of sort of application building and automation, we're not the deep Power BI experts. And our team also, out of our engagements with customers, we build not only document patterns and practices and guidance. And so a lot of the documentation content that you see on docs.microsoft.com/power platform/guidance is driven by our team, and it really comes out of lessons learned working with real Power Platform customers. But we also build something called the COE Starter Kit that over time has evolved to be much more than what I think a lot of people think of it as. A lot of people still think of the COE Starter Kit as uh, augmentation of the out of the box capabilities of the platform to help with governance and administration, right, as well as nurturing plans. But one of the things
Let's
that
explain some acronyms here for it.
oh yeah,
COE stands for Center of
yeah,
Excellence, just in
center
case
of excellence. Yep.
some of our people don't know. So this would be like you're wanting to have within your company, you're wanting to be able to have some standards and some governance around how these apps are built, have some uniformity, help people that are able to teach those that are just learning and all that kind of stuff, and kind of get a baseline for that and get that kind of started as a company, internal to your company, correct?
That's absolutely right. And so
Mm.
the concept of a center of excellence is sort of all things related to whatever the center of excellence purpose is for, and doing it in a consistent and repeatable fashion, right? So they are the nucleus of guidance within your own organization, your own patterns and practices, conventions, et cetera. And so, because as customers were adopting the Power Platform, one of the major areas of focus was more visibility into governance and administration. One of the places we started was in the area of governance and administration for the COE Starter Kit. One of the things, and you mentioned like consistent look and feel, we've recently introduced a theming module into the Center of Excellence Starter Kit. We're continuing to invest in tooling that, based on customer feedback, will help make their nucleus of people, whether it be a virtual community or a dedicated group of people in the organization, successful in their adoption of Power Platform, both in sort of the citizen developer scenarios, but from an IT and governance perspective, as well as breaching all the way into like the professional developer scenarios as well.
Okay, so let me interrupt you real quick. So the theming aspect of it, I haven't been in Canvas apps in 6 months, so maybe things have changed. But when I was creating my own Canvas app that I knew was going to be something that was going to be used in production, to be used by lots of people, I kind of rolled my own theming in there, and I wanted to be something that I could change. And most things that I saw in the community was kind of like, all right, you start it and it just sets all your defaults, but then you had a hard time changing it after that. Is this theming that you're working in something that is changeable, or is it more just, hey, you default, you set it, and then just bring it in, and if your company decides to go from orange to red or to green or something else, then it's kind of difficult to change to something else new, or how does that
No,
work?
it's actually changeable in the way that and there are lots of approaches to doing theming, because it's
Mm-hmm.
not native in the platform right now in a way that
Okay.
that does, what you just described. But the approach that we took, and specifically Mehdi on our team, built the theming, and he got a lot of inspiration from folks in the community and got feedback and sort of built something that could do what you just described. And so the way that it works is it actually stores theme data in CDS, the Common Data Service, right?
Okay.
And then allows you to have multiple themes, and then an application can essentially opt into those different themes. And then
Ooh.
you start off with a starter MS app file that references those themes in a way that, like, you start with that. As long as you're adding buttons and text boxes, etc., you change the theme, everything just changes because those controls are already referencing the themes, kind of like HTML references, CSS classes, etc. And then it pulls those themes out of the CDS database. So you could, for example, have a theme in your dev environment that was different from your production environment, that was
Yep.
different from your test
Oh,
environment, or you could have the ability to surface multiple themes to a user and allow them to pick the theme in the Canvas app. It has
and those are
multiple
all
purposes.
edited in CDS then, or
That's right. They're
configured
just
in CDS. Then? Okay,
all
that's
values in
cool.
CDS. And it even comes with like an editor to create themes that then get persisted in CDS and then makers can use, from their apps.
Awesome.
Then I have to ask you because I ran into this problem a while back where we used to in the old classic interface of Dynamics we could apply themes so the whole environment got like red color for the test and whatever you
Yeah.
want to use, and then when you go over to the Maker portal you get all you see is that little drop down in the top right corner. So I was asking, okay, but since we have theming, could we have that applied to the Maker portal as well? So with the theming now, is it strictly sort of geared towards the end users, or is it also for makers and customizers and so on?
So this is strictly for the end users, and in this case it's strictly for Canvas apps, right? And
Mm.
so if you think about where our team sits in the product group, because we exist to be a wing of the product group and engineering that works directly with customers, but is also, if you will, the direct conduit from those customers back to the feature PMs and leadership to funnel customer feedback in a sort of an accelerated fashion, if you will, right?
Okay. Right.
For certain Microsoft customers. A lot of what we do is when we build tools in the COE Starter Kit, frankly, is fill gaps in what's not possible out of the box, or natively in maker experiences, et cetera, because customers need those problems solved. And then
Yeah.
in many cases, the work that we do, like theming and the ALM Starter Kit that we'll talk about, um, in many cases serves as a early test bed for customers who want to solve those problems, but it's not out of the box, in the platform and in the Maker portal, et cetera,
So it
to sort
sounds
of
like you're the internal XRM Toolbox team.
kind of, I would say, to an extent, although I think the scope of XRM Toolbox is much broader than the scope
uh,
of our
Yeah.
team and what our team can actually
you,
accomplish, which is
you
why
guys aren't doing WinForms development?
no, we're not doing WinForms development.
Okay.
But it's also why we're on a journey to move everything that we do to an open source model. And when I say open source, I don't mean, so some people know that we have a GitHub repo, right, that has all of our zip files and source control, right? And we link to that from our docs page, et cetera. But we're actually moving to a model where everything we build under the COE Starter Kit umbrella is truly open source, just like the
Mm.
.NET Framework or .NET Core is truly open source, right? And
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft will still manage the product, but we will legitimately take contributions from the community. We'll review those contributions. We'll assess whether they meet our quality bar, and if so, we'll accept pull requests. and people can enhance the COE starter kit and the various modules of it over time.
That's a
Awesome.
huge step, and
Yeah.
really looking forward to seeing that.
Uh,
I don't
We are
envy
too.
the person being moderating and the sort of
No,
validating
this
the
has been sort
PRs
of
and
my pet project for quite a few months now, and
okay.
maybe longer than that. And so once we get to that point where we can actually start taking contributions, it'll be for me a glorious day, because I think that's
Yeah,
the way we've always wanted to do it. But frankly, it's taken some time for us to be in a position where we can do application lifecycle management and DevOps on top of building the COE starter kit in a way that we thought we could then actually take contributions.
yeah,
Right.
Awesome.
that's great.
Okay, so you just mentioned ALM right there. So let's dive into the starter kit here that you're working on. What is it? Why would people want it? And when can we have it?
Yeah, so we are building something. Speaking of naming being hard, we took the creative name of Power Platform Application Lifecycle Management Kit. We were actually calling it the DevOps Starter Kit and not the ALM Starter Kit. And unfortunately, because Microsoft took the word DevOps and attached it to one of our products, Azure DevOps, right? There's this overloaded assumption that when we say DevOps, we mean Azure DevOps
Azure
because we're
DevOps.
Microsoft, right?
Kind of like
When
CRM.
Yeah, there you go, right? Whereas in reality, we mean DevOps, the term, right? The industry term, the evolution of application lifecycle management, right? Then all the automation on top of it, et cetera. And that continuous sort of infinity cycle, if you will, of people who are in the DevOps discipline. Um, we just realized that like just using application lifecycle management just resonates easier with people and it doesn't confuse them.
Yep.
But basically what it is it as I mentioned, we're doing DevOps and source control management, and we have a branching strategy for the COE starter kit, and we have merging strategies, and we're doing a bunch of things that we think others will benefit from, right? In our learnings, how to do this with our own solution packages in the COE starter kit. And so we'd always wanted to release some concept of an ALM starter kit, right? But step number one was for us to get to healthy ALM for our own team, and that's one of the things that we've been working on. And the byproduct of that is that we've built things like Azure DevOps pipelines that work in a very generic way. They work for like any solution against any environment, right? They do a lot of things that you can see in the Azure DevOps build tools hands-on labs, but we take them sort of to the next level, right? For example, the build tools lab, it shows you how to do a commit to a create a Git branch, do a commit, and do a push to Azure DevOps as a repo. We go the next level and we ensure that like you're passing in the user, the email, right? You're passing in things like branches to commit. We'll do things like triggering solution upgrades downstream so that we delete things from downstream environments. A lot of things that I would say are more real world, if you will, than what a hands-on lab can show. And we've basically built this library of pipelines and more specifically pipeline templates, because we're authoring in the controversial language that or markup that some people love and some people hate, YAML. Um, and the reason we chose YAML is twofold. One, because we wanted to build something that we could then, because we knew GitHub Actions were coming, right? That we knew we could have essentially equivalent representations in the GitHub world for, right, for automation, as well as the fact that YAML, if you ever worked with Azure DevOps pipelines or builds, right, the language, the format that they're in is JSON, and importing and exporting them out of different environments is a little challenging, rewiring things up and making them extremely modular is very challenging as well. So YAML gives us the ability to build these things that are almost like componentized. And then we're very heavily variable driven to an extent where like, hey, if you pass an empty, JSON array in the, connection references variable, we'll just skip that step in our pipeline, right? So people don't have to use it. And so we've built these pipelines in a way that hopefully they will be usable in real world scenarios out of the box just as is. And because they're YAML and they go into the source control system, you can just pull them into your GitHub repo or your Azure DevOps Git repo, point Azure DevOps to them, set some variables and go. And you'll get things like environment variables, connection references. We do a lot of little things that, for example, Solution Packager doesn't do. Like when we unpack flows, we format them into JSON so that at the source control level, you can actually see line by line who changed what. And so you have traceability. And there's a ton of things that we're doing in these pipelines, and we've been building them over the course of the last couple months. again, A, for our own purposes, but then B, in a way that we could share them with people, and not just use them as a reference pipeline, but almost like a getting started pipeline that they can either just continue to use as is as we put more features into our pipelines, or use them as a starting point to customize themselves. And so it starts with all the pipeline work that we've done in Azure DevOps to use against our branching and merging strategy, our team development strategy, et cetera, because I've lost count of how many people actually contribute internally to the COE starter kit, right? And so it's the pipelines first, but then what we've built is we've built a set of Canvas apps on top of the pipelines that make your daily, and that's what you folks saw on Twitter, right? That make your daily interaction driving those pipelines much easier. So for example, we've got a Canvas app that will allow you to, basically point to an environment, see all the solutions in the environment, and for any given solution, click a button and commit the changes, whatever customizations you've made, commit them through a pipeline, passing it variables through a custom connector, and basically do the whole export to Git process, right? We've got a pipeline that imports from Git, so it takes the latest build or whatever build that you specify if you want to get the latest customizations or code into an environment to work off the same source of truth that everybody else has, right? Sort of similar to like getting from master, and branching and doing your own work. So we've also got a set of Canvas apps, another Canvas app that is geared more towards what I will, and unfairly and probably poorly articulated, called DevOps 101. So we've got one Canvas app that is geared towards the traditional, let's say, XRM audience that knows concepts like solutions at a depth level. They don't want a veneer over their DevOps processes. They want full control over it, right? They understand branching and merging. They don't want to be dictated a branching and merging strategy, but they do want to be more productive in their day-to-day work. So that's one app we have. We have another app that is geared more towards like a citizen developer, not doing exotic team development, right? Just maybe one or two people working in a single environment, wanting to get their changes in source control, move it from dev, test to prod, and not have to learn Git, branching, or any of that sort of stuff. In fact, the app itself kind of works with this concept of a project, and a maker, citizen developer says, I want to start a project. They go through an approval process behind the scenes. 3 environments get created for them. A solution gets created with some baseline solutions, like for example, the theming solution that is a prerequisite. They get sent to a link and they just start working within the solution container in the maker portal, right? So it just sort of, all those little steps that you can get wrong, it sort of eliminates all of them. They do their work. They say, okay, I'm ready to push it to test. It goes from their environment through an approval process. Somebody can approve it. Behind the scenes, we create pull requests and do all sorts of stuff, but the maker never knows, but the admin can and approves it. And all the maker sees is that somebody approved it and it moves from dev to test, right? So that's like the DevOps 101. And then the other extreme is this, like, hey, I'm already a CE person. I know Git. I know these things. I just want to make my life easier, and I want to have tried and tested, hardened pipelines that I know will work for advanced scenarios.
Wow.
Okay, so this is like, we're dealing with the solutions, formerly CRM solutions, and now they're CDS solutions.
Yep.
Now they include Canvas apps. Now they include flows. Now
That's
they
right.
include all that fun stuff, and it's packaging this up. It's handling those solutions in 2 different methodologies. The one where I'm on a team with multiple people. We have multiple people editing it and touching it at the same point in time. Very, very confusing. Very important to get that right.
Yep.
And be able to see what changes have been made and be able to pick what you need. So that's the first app, and is that like the advanced? Do you have a name different for that? Or
I'd love your
again,
feedback and other
things.
people's
It's hard.
feedback. I think I might leave the official naming of it till after we kind of get it out there on
Okay.
GitHub. But
Leave it to marketing.
I've been pushing for no longer do people call it Azure DevOps, just call it ASDOps. So just something ASDOps. ASDOps.
So right now we've just been calling it the Power Ops Azure DevOps Edition. So we've been calling the tool Power Ops, right?
Okay.
And
Power
so
Ops.
there's
All right.
one, the light one we've been calling Power Ops Lite internally, and the one that's more geared towards those who know Git and Azure DevOps, et cetera, we've just been calling Power Ops Azure DevOps Edition.
It's really hard when you come up with this advanced one that you don't want people to use that don't have any background, and the other one, it's hard to say sucky version, non-sucky version. Like that's what they hear,
Right, yeah.
and that's what they see. You're like, the advanced version, and then you got the not so advanced version, and they're like, well, I don't want the dummies one. I want like the good one, And so it's hard for them. It's hard to come up with a name that says, this is great. This is can be far more complicated. It's almost like you want the simple or the complicated. Like
That's
just,
right.
just call it for dummies.
And we've been intentional, right, with the approach to the two apps, and that's why we started with two separate apps. To not slow us down, frankly, but one comes from a perspective that the people who are using the advanced version, if you will, they don't want to be dictated to, right? They want to be able to do things their way, but get productivity. Whereas in the other extreme, like in general, some people really do. They just want it to work, right? And they don't want to know how it all works under the hood. So we've been very conscious about keeping them as separate apps. And then over time, we'll think about, especially based on feedback from the community, how we can rationalize it into maybe a single experience. But I don't know if we'll ever get there, because I think we may prove that like it makes sense to have two different experiences, one for somebody who doesn't want all the complexity, because with power comes responsibility, right? And they don't want the responsibility to do something wrong, and so we'll guide them down a happy path, but it'll also be much less flexible. Whereas those who are willing to do things their way, they know with that power comes that responsibility, right?
Yeah. So I'm curious, since it's handling all the Git-related activities that you need, does it also sort of impose on you what kind of branching strategy you're using, or is that configurable somehow, or it doesn't need to work with branches at all?
So the tool doesn't, but it doesn't dictate, right? But we've written it in such a way that it defaults to our branching strategy. So we take a very simple approach, right? We release in versions, right? We're not doing like continuous integration, continuous deployment, like where like every day you get a brand new solution package that you need to deploy, right? That's more of like
we release what in versions?
The solution packages themselves.
Okay, the solution
like
packager
1.1, 1.2, etc. Right? And so we have a master branch that ultimately represents the source code of what's out there in the public today, right? And then for every new solution package, we have a vNext branch, which is effectively our main branch for that solution package, right? And so in general, because package is a good unit of containment, we have like a branch for each one of those, and then developers work off of that branch. So let's say I get a work item. I'm going to do some work today. I go create a branch off of the main branch for the solution that I'm working on, right? The vNext branch. It is the current main branch, the ultimate source of truth for vNext. But I do my work in isolation, right? And then ultimately I push a bunch up to the repo. I push a bunch up to the repo. I may have, 100 commits, right, in my work in progress, because I want to be able to go look at what changed. In fact, I just did this today. I hosed something in one of my Canvas apps I was working on, and in order to revert back to some previous code I was using, I went right back to the source control repository. I looked at the right commit, and I got the function calls out of the source code, and I brought it into my Canvas app, fixed my problem, and made the adjustments from there, right? So
I just get a feeling. I mean, when you're constantly developing these tools that you're working, and now the Canvas app we've seen briefly on Twitter, and you're working with sort of the whole ALM story with ALM apps, I sense there's a lot of inception going on. So
Yes.
you're using your apps to commit stuff for your apps, and
That's right.
do
Absolutely.
you get dizzy and lightheaded sometimes?
It does sometimes, and in fact, part of the reason we built the tool is because I've made plenty of mistakes, and putting things in the wrong branch, and and setting up pull requests where I was thinking I was doing one thing, but I was actually trying to get the code reviewed for the app that I'm building, not one of the solutions that the app helps us build, kind of thing. And so the tool that we've built, the Canvas app that you saw on Twitter, kind of helps us sort of have a little bit more clarity there and prevent some of the mistakes of basically source controlling something that we're using a tool to drive source control for, right?
Yeah.
And build and deployment automation.
This is the same thing that happened with Roslyn, right? They created a language with a compiler that was like C++, I think, and then they created the language with its own compiler. So you're like, wait, what? So yeah, and that's kind of a neat stage to get to where you've kind of solved this chicken and the egg problem of, I need this really good tool in order to create this good tool, but I need the good tool in order to create the good tool. And
That's
so
right.
yeah, so if you can get over that hump, then you get to enjoy the efforts, the the actual benefits of that
Yeah,
work.
and
So
I would say stabilization is the key, right? Because we're still stabilizing our pipelines and the Canvas app to a point where like we're not seeing the churn ourselves, and so um, our team's feedback internally on the fact that we've hit that stabilization point is also sort of a quality gate for us to make this an open source project. So that's why we're kind of doing it internally first, and then kind of moving it all to GitHub in a new repo.
awesome, awesome. So I know that there is you aren't the person that gets to decide the date things go. So is there a date you are pushing for, or something that you're hoping to have everything in there, or do you not want to share that at this time?
No, so we
You
are
get to choose that as well.
cautiously optimistic that we'll be done within the next month.
Okay.
Candidly, there are some fixes in the platform. So actually, let me step back and give a little context. So when we embarked on this whole effort, oh geez, a year plus ago, this idea of building an ALM starter kit, frankly, we just couldn't. You know, ALM is, in fact, I had built on GitHub something called the Dynamics 365 DevOps kit, my own little pet project. And so DevOps in the Dynamics world, although there are also, certainly barriers to it as well, was relatively well established, right? But when we merged parts of Dynamics 365 customer engagement, or what used to be called CRM, right, the underlying platform into the Power Platform, and CDS became its own thing, right, the foundation under all Dynamics 365 apps, the
Mm-hmm.
foundation of model-driven apps. Um, and the decision was made to make the CDS solution packaging the ALM engine moving forward. The reality is that there was this laundry list of known limitations in Canvas apps and flows that made using CDS solution packages problematic. And the platform team has been going through a effort to ensure that come this October release wave, that the vast majority of those little paper cuts, right, that made it the end-to-end ALM difficult to achieve, are addressed. And so we've been waiting on those things so that we can then come out with this starter kit.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're still waiting on a few things in the platform that'll materialize in the next, 2 weeks to 2 months, to really be able to say yes. Anytime somebody asks us, "Can I automate this? Can I automate that?" Yes, you can, and here's how. And here's how we do it in our pipelines, and here's the task that does it, or here's the PowerShell that does it, and eventually we'll have a build tool task and a GitHub action that'll do it. But right now you can do it in PowerShell, that kind of thing. Um, and so assuming that some of the bugs fixes we're waiting on for things like connection references or known limitations, for things like connection references and a few other things get addressed, we hope to launch in the next, in about a month from now. So you had mentioned this might be out 3 weeks after we record this. So I would say we may launch by then, or we may be a couple weeks out still. Like we're not committing to a date, we're committing to quality, so that when we
Yep.
do launch and we take contributions from the community, it's something that we can sustain.
Awesome.
Did you say contributions from the community?
I did. I did. So if I didn't mention this, because we had a bit of a chat before we started recording, one of the things that we've been doing on our team is we've always wanted to do was make the COE starter kit completely open source, right? Not just
Wow.
put the zip files out on GitHub, but use the source control system the way it's supposed to be used and take contributions. There for lots of reasons that's been difficult up until now. We believe by the time we launch, through a mix of both platform improvements and tooling that's coming, we will be in a place that will allow us to not only share our entire source code, and when I say source code, both the point and click stuff that you build that ultimately shows up in solution packages. So for those who aren't familiar with the solutioning system, you can take that zip file, unpack it, chop it up into smaller source controllable form, and do more traditional ALM using source controlled and build and deploy automation. And so we think we'll be in a place where we can take contributions, and it is our goal to not only have our backlog public, not only for the ALM Starter Kit, but the entire Center of Excellence Starter Kit, as well as get to a model where we're actually prioritizing what we build next inside of the COE starter kit based on that public backlog. And then if people want to take contributions, they can fork, they can make some changes. Ideally they will have done that, coordinating with us and, thinking about an issue on GitHub that would apply that they could add to, or create the issue, then go fork, make the change and say, hey, I created an issue and I fixed it, so why don't you take it? If we think it meets our quality bar, then we'll absolutely take the contribution and hopefully get more people in the community involved in building the things that we build. Because as I said in the beginning, in many cases, we're building things that fill gaps until things are more natively supported in the platform.
That's just great. So you're democratizing the whole COE starter kit now.
That is our goal, absolutely. Now, truth be told, we're going to start with the ALM starter kit, right? We're going to work through that model, hopefully have some successes and have some, challenges as well, learn from them, improve them. And once we feel like we've gotten that model right with the ALM starter kit, in short order, we'll start bringing the rest of the COE starter kit into that repo, and we will start taking contributions there as well.
Awesome. Wow. It really sounds like this is kind of a cheesy analogy, but it's like we're on a cusp of greatness here, where we've got we have to have all the roots in the tree good to go before we can start building on top of it. And once we do, then we can build like crazy. But yeah, getting all those little paper cuts that we all seem to see, especially on the solutioning stuff, we realize, oh, well, by default, this is extracted to something that I can't, it's a one single line, I can't actually read it, or can't see what changed and all that kind of fun stuff. So, and if even those things that I've attempted to at least have a little crutch for in my Canvas app packager, those types of things are things that are going to have to be resolved one way or the other. So excited to see what that comes out to be.
Yeah, I think I don't know if you sense the deep breath in my voice, right? And I don't even know if the video goes live with the Toolcast these days, but
maybe we should do it. But no, not right now.
But
it's
no so there is a big sort of an element of anxiety in that, because I think you're right. I think we are on the cusp of greatness, but we're also being very aggressive and ambitious about going out with an open source, take contribution model very shortly after a lot of improvements in the platform and tooling come out, right? And so I do anticipate, and I hope that people in the community will bear with us, that we will go through some growing pains as we're trying this new model. And I think we'll learn from it, and we'll get better in it, and eventually everybody will be better off. We'll be able to learn, bring in expertise from the community, and not do all this in with a small group of people behind closed doors. We'll be able to share knowledge. We'll be able to deliver more things to customers. And so I think in the end, it'll be great. It all is predicated on a bunch of improvements in the platform that we're kind of coming, that are going to come in hot, and then we're going to come out with our kit on top of. And so it'll be fun times. But I do think we are sort of. I've had this hope that one day, being somebody who's been in the CDS world and the Dynamics world for many years, and also a pro dev background, and been a big believer in the DevOps discipline, right? I've had this sort of hope that one day we would get to where I think we will be in the coming months. And while it's not crystal clear, I think, because it is all these little paper cuts in the solutioning system, et cetera, I think that I know that the October release really is the release where we solve a lot of the lingering known limitations in doing ALM in the platform and in tools. Now, we may not have everything perfect, but I think by the middle of the October wave, I think we will be in a place where we'll look back and go, man, things have gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
And then hopefully our ALM starter kit is just sort of the cherry on top that says, and now you don't have to learn all the things that we had to learn to build our pipelines and build our Canvas app to make ourselves more productive. You can have it too.
Yep.
So just a sort of distinction here. Are you aiming for this working with CDS and solutions, or also Project Oakdale stuff, which is of course CDS and solutions, but in a limited fashion?
Yeah, so that's a little more nuanced, but because Oakdale just uses CDS solutions under the hood, the answer is long term it'll work with Oakdale as well, right? So it's always hard for me to distinguish what's public and what I know, right? And so
don't I know that problem? I don't even know that was that's not public.
And so long term, the goal is that this will work with Oakdale as well, but just in the context of what's possible with Oakdale and CDS solutions.
I feel like, kind of as a I remember in XRM Toolbox when we came out with, okay, let's post all the tools out in NuGet and make a tool store. And when that happened, stuff went crazy.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's gonna be something like this where, oh, everyone knows now I can do this, and they're gonna go out and they're gonna start doing stuff with it and coming up with things you hadn't ever thought of before. So really excited about it.
One of the things that's interesting is that like um, the in the I don't know if legacy CDS world is the right way to describe it, right? But in the world of people who have been around CDS in previous namings of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dynamics 365 customer engagement, like XRM Toolbox is an absolute necessity, right? You don't get your job done without it. And however, we talked about this a little bit the last podcast I was on, like in the Power Platform world, a lot of people still don't know what XRM Toolbox is and why they need it to make their lives better with CDS. And so, and one of the things that we're learning as well is that like customers just want things that run in a browser, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I could certainly see a day where certain people who've built XRM Toolbox tools, if they wanted to, say, hey, why don't we move this to a Canvas app that runs as part of the COE starter kit, accomplishes the same thing, but a customer doesn't have to download a tool and use a WinForms tool, et cetera. Like, and I'm not suggesting that that's our mission, right? But what I'm saying is like the possibilities are endless once we get the COE starter kit out there. And like to your point about unleashing things out on NuGet, right? We don't even know what the future holds once we unleash this out on GitHub. And we're kind of hoping we have that same kind of problem, right? Where people just start wanting to build really, really cool stuff. And there's so much work to do that in the backlog that like um, the impact that it can have is way beyond the small team that we have could ever
Yeah.
have by ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. 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 And now we're kind of coming against a time limit here. So is there anything else that you want to make sure our listeners know, or anything else you desperately want to make sure they hear before we call it quits for today?
No, I mean, it's one of these things that scares me because we're talking about something that now I've put pressure on myself and our team to get out there. But keep the pressure on us. Pay attention to our
Mm-hmm.
GitHub repo. Technically, we have a drop of old code that is out there. We have our backlog, at least for the ALM starter kit, out there. Now, I haven't maintained like what we've closed internally out on the GitHub repo, and so once we launch, we'll kind of clean up a lot of those issues. But I would actually welcome people to go to the GitHub project now. It's github.com/Microsoft/COE-starter-kit. That's going to be our new repo. We've got, at
Okay.
least for the ALM starter kit, it's still called the DevOps starter kit on the repo. Our backlog there, like start throwing stuff on it. Like, we can't commit to when we'll get those done, but that's the beauty of a backlog, right? You work in iterations, you prioritize, and you build the stuff that sort of resonates the most. So I would definitely encourage people to start poking around, providing feedback, adding things to the backlog, and preparing for contributing. In fact, we have a contribution guide out there. If you look at one of the branches, there's a branch that has our README MD for a contribution guide. It's based off of other contribution guides from other Azure projects. So take a look at the contribution guide. If you think
Mm.
the way we're thinking about accepting contributions could be improved, let us know. We'll fix the contribution guide based on feedback. So
Okay.
like I'm looking forward to the day where I can point people to say, hey, we've got a minimal viable product. This will work for you as is, and let's make it better together.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Awesome. We'll be sure to put those links in the show notes, Mark, as well as anything else you want to give us. Now, assuming that this doesn't go live before we release this episode, where can people check in to see if it's live or not? See if you decide, like, is there a blog they should be watching for that, or what should they be
Yeah,
looking for?
so I mean, you can follow me. Like I send these little cryptic tweets for people like who know what we're doing and are interested, just to kind of give them little real-time updates. So you can follow me on Twitter. I'm DevKeydet, DevKeydet. We will announce this once it's sort of launched. We may launch soft without an announcement ahead of it, but we'll certainly have something on the Power Apps blog. Folks on our team blog quite a bit on the Power Apps blog. Ultimately, we'll have docs on docs.microsoft.com that talk about it as well. But I would say if you really want to know about it, follow me or Manuela, who on my team, Manuela Pichler. I forget her Twitter handle, but I can give it to you guys, and other folks on the PowerCat team, because we'll be talking about it on Twitter and other social media. Then we'll blog it, and then we'll get it out on docs.
Great.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So I think you've listed pretty much every single methodology that our listeners should be using to contact you and to find out more about the project. Anything that you else you want to share out there?
Um, no, not that I can think of. I
Okay.
appreciate the time being able to chat with you folks again. It's always
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
It was
I
excited
really
when you
appreciate
said,
your
"Hey,
work
you
as
want to
well.
come on again?" I am a little nervous, to be honest with you, to be talking about this so soon because it just amps up the pressure. But there's nothing like pressure to make you get things done faster, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Totally. Totally. Okay. So that's how our listeners can get a hold of our guests. Jonas, how can listeners get a hold of us?
Well, they could we're also on Twitter, just like Mark, at XrmToolCast actually. And yeah, we're on LinkedIn. There's an email, cast@xrmtoolbox.com and so on. You can't miss us.
Awesome. Well, Mark, thanks for joining us. Thanks for sharing. We hope that you can get stuff done when you want to get it done and be able to release it when you want to release it, and that you don't have anything else holding you up. But we understand at the same point in time that there are no guarantees in this world, especially in this COVID world. There are no guarantees. Things you thought that were going to happen, that didn't happen. So
That's right. And
yep.
quality is always the ultimate bar.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Agreed as well. So, all right. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Talk
you.
later.
Bye.
Bye. This has been the XrmToolCast with Jonas Rapp and Daryl Labar. If you have any questions for Jonas or I, or suggestions for future episodes, please send them to cast@xrmtoolbox.com or tweet to XrmToolCast.